Hashtag the Galactic Empire ignored a wounded human sniper. Their last mistake, the twin sons of Kepler, 442b, cast long shadows across the crystalline battlefield as Sergeant Marcus Chun pressed his back against the fallen Thicarian warwalker. Purple blood from the alien machine's crew still dripped from the shattered cockpit above him. His left leg was completely useless now, the bone clearly broken in at least 2 places from when the walker had collapsed. The metallic taste of his own blood filled his mouth, and he could feel the warm wetness spreading across his tactical vest where shrapnel had found its mark. Around him, the battle for the mining colony of New Brisbane had ended 3 hours ago. The Galactic Empire's forces had withdrawn to their ships in orbit, confident they had eliminated all human resistance. The screams and weapons fire had faded to an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional groan of settling debris and the distant hum of alien patrol drones sweeping the ruins. Marcus clutched his modified Barrett M82, a 3 sniper rifle closer to his chest. The weapon had been his constant companion for 8 years of war against the Empire, upgraded with human ingenuity and desperation. Its smart scope could track targets at ranges the aliens considered impossible, and its ammunition had been specially crafted to penetrate even the heaviest Thicarian armor. The rifle was more than just a weapon to Marcus. It was the instrument through which humanity's defiance sang its deadly song. The communication device in his ear crackled with static, then went dead. The orbital bombardment had taken out the human command structure hours ago, along with most of the colonial defense grid. He was alone, cut off from any support, surrounded by an entire alien occupation force. By every military doctrine in both human and alien warfare, he should surrender or die quietly. But Marcus Chun had never been particularly good at following doctrine. He activated his rifle's advanced targeting system and began scanning the horizon through its scope. The Empire forces were settling in for a long occupation, their confidence evident in their casual deployment. Thicarian shock troopers, 8 feet tall, with chitinous armor plating, patrolled in loose formations. Their Zephyrian engineers, insectoid beings with multiple arms, worked to establish communication arrays. High above, Korthak command officers in their distinctive, flowing robes coordinated from hover platforms, their pale blue skin marking them as the Empire's intellectual elite. They moved with the arrogance of a force that had conquered 47 star systems without meaningful resistance. Humans were supposed to be just another primitive species to be subjugated, their world stripped of resources, and their people enslaved or eliminated. The Empire had faced down energy-wielding crystals, hive-minded nanobots, and spacefaring, tentacled horrors. What could one small, soft-bodied species from a backwater planet possibly do to threaten their dominance? Marcus smiled grimly as he watched a Korthak commander gesture dismissively at the human settlement's ruins. The alien was clearly explaining to subordinates how easily the primitive mammals had been defeated. The commander's hover platform drifted slowly across the battlefield at a range of exactly 1,847 meters from Marcus's position, well beyond what any alien sniper could accurately engage. Human snipers, however, were a different matter entirely. Marcus had been born on Earth's Australian continent, in a region where his ancestors had learned to hunt across vast distances in harsh conditions. His great-grandfather had been a sniper in World War III, his grandfather in the Resource Wars, and his father in the colonial expansion conflicts. The Chun family had passed down not just marksmanship skills, but an intimate understanding of patience, calculation, and the devastating psychology of precision killing. When a galactic empire had first made contact with humanity 50 years ago, they had offered the standard terms given to all developing species: surrender your sovereignty, provide tribute, and labor, accept client status under empire protection. Humanity's response had been polite but firm. Thank you for the offer, but we'll manage our own affairs. The empire had been amused. When economic pressure failed to bring humans into line, they had deployed their standard conquest fleet. When that fleet had been destroyed by human ingenuity and ferocity, the Empire had been surprised. When the second, larger fleet had also been eliminated, the Empire had been concerned. Now, 3 years into a war they had expected to end in 3 days, The Empire was beginning to suspect that humans might be something entirely new in their experience. Marcus adjusted his scope's targeting parameters and began calculating wind speed, atmospheric pressure, and gravitational variance. The Korthak commander's platform followed a predictable patrol pattern, designed to demonstrate control while staying safely away from any possible ground-based threats. The alien's confidence was about to become his weakness. The first shot would have to be perfect. Once Marcus fired, every alien sensor in the area would focus on his position. His broken leg meant he couldn't relocate quickly, and his injuries would only worsen as time passed. Whatever statement he was going to make, it would have to be definitive and unmistakable. He thought about the colonists of New Brisbane, families who had come to this world seeking a peaceful life among the crystal formations that grew naturally in Kepler 442b's unique soil. Children who had played in the purple grass of the settlements at Central Park. Engineers and farmers who had built something beautiful and productive on a world that had never known war. The Empire had killed them all with casual efficiency, viewing human lives as nothing more than obstacles to resource extraction. The aliens would strip mine the crystal formations, leaving nothing but scarred earth where New Brisbane had once stood. In the Empire's view, this was simply business as usual. Marcus chambered around and settled into his firing position. The pain from his broken leg faded into background noise as his mind entered the zone of absolute focus that had kept him alive through 8 years of impossible battles. His breathing slowed and deepened. His heartbeat became a steady rhythm that he could time his shots between. The Korthak commander's platform reached the furthest point of its patrol route and began turning back. In approximately 43 seconds, it would present the optimal angle for a shot that would penetrate the platform's shields and strike the alien center of mass. Marcus had one chance to announce to the Galactic Empire that this war was far from over. One chance to remind them that humanity had never learned to quit. One chance to prove that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one you think you've already defeated. Marcus Chun steadied his rifle and prepared to show the galaxy why humans were different. Why they fought when defeat was certain, struck back when overwhelmed, and never, ever gave up. The Empire was about to learn what Earth's military philosophers had known for millennia. The most dangerous weapon in any conflict is a human being with nothing left to lose. Through his scope, the Korthak commander came into perfect alignment. Marcus exhaled slowly and squeezed the trigger. Hashtag the Galactic Empire ignored a wounded human sniper. Their last mistake, the modified Barrett's roar echoed across the crystalline battlefield like thunder in a cathedral. The hypersonic round crossed 1,847 meters in less than 2 seconds, its trajectory calculated to perfection by both human instinct and machine precision. The Korthak commander's personal shield generators, designed to stop energy weapons and conventional projectiles, proved utterly inadequate against a tungsten core round traveling at 4 times the speed of sound. The alien's upper torso simply ceased to exist in a spray of pale blue blood and shattered chitin. The hover platform, suddenly, lacking its pilot's neural control, spiraled out of control and crashed into a formation of Thacarian shock troopers, crushing 2 of them and sending the others scrambling for cover. Marcus allowed himself 3 seconds to watch the chaos bloom across the alien positions before chambering another round. The element of surprise would last perhaps 90 seconds before the Empire's advanced sensor systems located him. He intended to make every one of those seconds count. The Zephyrian engineers were the next priority. Their insectoid forms made them difficult targets, but Marcus had studied alien anatomy during his 8 years of war. He knew exactly where to place shots for maximum lethality. The lead engineer, recognizable by the golden patterns on its carapace, was coordinating the technical teams from atop a communications relay tower. Marcus adjusted his aim for the increased elevation and wind variance. The Zephyrian's multiple arms were gesticulating rapidly as it directed subordinates to investigate the commander's death. Through his scope, Marcus could see the alien's compound eyes rotating to scan the horizon, already searching for threats. The second shot punched through the Zephyrian's thorax, the tungsten core maintaining enough velocity to continue through its body and destroy the communication relay behind it. The engineer collapsed in a tangle of limbs, its death throes sending cascades of sparks from the damaged equipment. Immediately, the remaining aliens began responding with trained military precision. Thicarian shock troopers moved into defensive formations, their energy weapons powering up with distinctive whines. Aerial drones launched from hidden positions, their sensors sweeping the battlefield in search of the sniper's location. The remaining Korthak officers retreated to hardened positions while issuing rapid commands to their forces. But Marcus was already moving to his third target, a Thicarian weapons specialist who was setting up a particle cannon designed to level what remained of the human settlement. The alien was working behind the cover of an intact building, visible only through a narrow window that provided a shooting angle of perhaps 6 inches. Marcus had made harder shots. The rifle spoke again, and the Thicarian's head snapped back as the round found its mark. The partially assembled particle cannon toppled sideways, its focusing crystals shattering against the ground in a cascade of useless fragments. 3 shots, 3 kills, and 3 critical pieces of Empire infrastructure destroyed. But now the aliens had triangulated his position. Energy beams began lancing toward the fallen warwalker, turning the crystalline ground around Marcus into molten slag. He pressed himself deeper into cover as superheated air washed over his position. The aliens were learning what human military doctrine had established centuries ago. Never ignore a sniper, no matter how hopeless their situation appears. A single marksman with sufficient skill and determination could disrupt operations far beyond their apparent capability. But the Empire's arrogance ran deep, bred from decades of easy victories against species that fought according to predictable patterns. Humans didn't fight according to patterns. They fought according to necessity. Marcus activated his rifle's emergency cooling system and began scanning for his next target through the scope's thermal imaging mode. The aliens were adapting quickly, using cover more effectively, and moving in unpredictable ways. But they were still thinking like a conventional military force facing a conventional threat. Marcus Chan was anything but conventional. He had grown up hearing stories of his ancestors who had fought impossible odds with primitive weapons. His great-great-grandfather had held off an entire enemy company with nothing but a hunting rifle and intimate knowledge of local terrain. His family had passed down not just marksmanship techniques, but something more valuable: the understanding that warfare was ultimately about will, not just firepower. The Empire possessed overwhelming technological superiority, vast fleets, and soldiers bred for combat from dozens of warrior species. What they lacked was the peculiar human ability to continue fighting when logic demanded surrender. They had never encountered a species that treated impossible odds as merely another tactical challenge to overcome. Marcus spotted movement through his scope, a group of Thicarian engineers attempting to restore the communication array destroyed by his second shot. If they succeeded, orbital support would rain down on his position within minutes. The engineers were working behind heavy cover, but Marcus noticed they had established a predictable rotation pattern to minimize exposure to sniper fire. Predictable patterns were fatal against a human marksman. Marcus waited patiently, timing the alien's movements until he could anticipate exactly when the lead engineer would expose itself. The shot would require threading the needle through overlapping pieces of cover while accounting for the target's rapid movement. The margin for error was essentially zero. Through his earpiece, static suddenly resolved into a weak signal. A human voice, barely audible through the interference. Any station, this is Colonial Defense Grid Station 7. We have survivors in the northern sector. Repeat, we have civilian survivors requiring immediate assistance. Marcus smiled grimly as he lined up a shot. The Empire thought they had eliminated all human presence on Kepler 442b. They were about to discover their intelligence was flawed. Somewhere in the ruins of New Brisbane, human beings were still alive, still fighting, still refusing to accept defeat. The Barrett roared its defiance across the battlefield once more. The Thicarian engineers spun and fell, its repair tools scattering across the crystalline ground. The communication array remained dead, buying precious time for whatever human forces were still operating in the northern sector. But Marcus's position was now fully compromised. Alien soldiers were advancing toward his location from 3 directions, their weapons systems locked onto his thermal signature. Overhead, combat drones circled like mechanical vultures, waiting for clear shots. Energy beams continued to slice through the air around him, each salvo coming closer to his hiding spot. Any reasonable military assessment would conclude that Sergeant Marcus Chun had perhaps 2 minutes left to live. His leg was shattered, his ammunition was limited, and he was outnumbered by roughly 300 to 1. Retreat was impossible, reinforcement was unavailable, and surrender would mean interrogation followed by execution. Marcus chambered another round and began calculating angles for his next shot. He had spent 8 years teaching the Galactic Empire that humans were unreasonable. Today seemed like an excellent day to continue that education. The aliens were about to learn that a wounded human sniper wasn't a defeated enemy. It was a force multiplier with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Marcus Chun intended to make his final stand a lesson the Empire would never forget. The scope settled on another target, and Marcus prepared to demonstrate why humanity had never met a fight it wouldn't take. The Galactic Empire ignored a wounded human sniper. Their last mistake, Marcus's 5th shot, took out a Korthak tactical coordinator who had been directing the encirclement operation for what the alien considered a safe distance. The round's impact sent the pale blue creature tumbling from its command position, causing immediate chaos in the coordinated advance. Without centralized direction, the various alien units began operating on individual initiative, creating gaps in their formation that Marcus could exploit. But the return fire was intensifying. Energy beams carved through the crystalline debris around him with increasing precision. His cover was being systematically destroyed, each alien salvo reducing his protective barrier by inches. The fallen warwalker that had sheltered him was beginning to show stress fractures from repeated hits, its armored hull glowing cherry red in several places. Marcus activated his rifle's magazine display, 7 rounds remaining. In a conventional firefight against 300 enemies, 7 bullets were meaningless. But Marcus Chun had never fought conventional firefights. Through his scope, he observed the aliens adapting their tactics. The Thicarians were using their natural armor to advance through areas where energy weapons provided covering fire. The Zephyrians were employing their multiple limbs to manipulate equipment while staying low. The remaining Korthak officers had withdrawn to maximum range, directing operations through drone intermediaries. They were learning. That was both good and bad. Good because it meant they were taking him seriously as a threat, committing resources and attention far beyond what a single sniper should merit. Bad because it meant his window of opportunity was closing rapidly. Marcus shifted position slightly, ignoring the spike of pain from his broken leg, and focused on a new priority target, a Thicarian combat engineer who was setting up what appeared to be a portable shield generator. If that device came online, the aliens could advance under its protection and overrun his position within minutes. The engineer was working efficiently, its 4 arms manipulating multiple tools simultaneously. Marcus could see that the alien was experienced, probably a veteran of dozens of conquest campaigns. It worked with the casual confidence of a being that had never faced serious opposition from primitive species. Marcus decided to correct that misunderstanding. The 6th shot shattered the shield generator's primary power coupling just as the engineer activated it. The device's emergency systems triggered a massive energy discharge that killed not only the engineer, but also 3 nearby Thicarian soldiers. The explosion sent a cascade of sparks across the alien positions, temporarily blinding their optical sensors. In a momentary confusion, Marcus heard the static-filled transmission again. Station 7 to any colonial defense personnel. We have armed civilians and 2 wounded Marines in Sector 4. Can anyone provide fire support? Armed civilians. Marines. The Empire's intelligence had been catastrophically wrong. They hadn't eliminated human resistance. They had simply driven it underground. Somewhere in the ruins of New Brisbane, Marcus's people were regrouping, treating their wounded, and preparing for another round of fighting. Marcus keyed his radio transmitter, hoping his message would penetrate the interference. Station 7, this is Sergeant Chun, 2nd Colonial Marines. I'm providing distraction for your operations. Suggest you move now while hostiles are focused on my position. The response came back immediately. Chun, we thought you were dead. Orders are to extract all available personnel to Rally Point Delta. Negative on extraction, Marcus replied, lining up his 7th shot on a Zephyrian sensor operator. My position is compromised and mobility is limited. I'll maintain fire and keep them busy. Get the civilians to safety. Marcus, you can't hold 300 aliens by yourself. Marcus pulled the trigger, watching the Zephyrian collapse in a tangle of limbs as its sensor array exploded in a shower of sparks. Not trying to hold them, he said calmly, ejecting the empty magazine. Just trying to annoy them. He slammed in his final magazine, 5 rounds. Around him, the alien noose was tightening. Thicarian shock troopers were advancing through the crystal formations, using their natural armor to shrug off the few human explosive devices that detonated in their path. Zephyrian technicians had restored enough sensor capability to track his heat signature despite his attempts at concealment. Overhead, combat drones were maneuvering for clear shots at his position. By every rational measure, Marcus Chun was about to die. But humans had never been entirely rational, especially when protecting others. Marcus had grown up on stories of ancient warriors who held mountain passes against entire armies, of pilots who flew damaged aircraft into enemy formations, of soldiers who threw themselves on grenades to save their comrades. The concept of acceptable losses was foreign to human military philosophy. Every life was worth saving, every civilian was worth protecting, every impossible fight was worth taking. The Empire simply couldn't comprehend this mindset. Their military doctrine was based on calculated risk, acceptable casualties, and strategic withdrawal when costs exceeded benefits. They fought to achieve political goals with minimum losses. Humans fought because fighting itself was a statement of principles. Marcus spotted a cluster of Korthak officers who were coordinating the final assault from behind a makeshift barrier. They were gesticulating rapidly, their pale features animated with what appeared to be excitement. Through his scope's audio enhancement, he could hear fragments of their conversation. Primitive weapon, limited ammunition, matter of minutes now. Study the corpse, afterward, understand human psychology. Recommend orbital bombardment to ensure elimination. Marcus smiled grimly as he aligned his crosshairs on the central figure, a Korthak with elaborate ceremonial markings that indicated high rank. The alien was holding what appeared to be a recording device, clearly documenting the engagement for later study. Perfect. Marcus had always wanted to be part of an educational program. The 8th shot removed the top of the Korthak officer's skull, sending its recording device spinning through the air to shatter against the crystalline ground. The other officers scattered, their academic interest in human behavior suddenly, replaced by very personal concerns about survival. 4 rounds left. The aliens were close enough now that Marcus could hear their individual communications, their breathing, the mechanical whir of their equipment. Thicarian soldiers were positioning themselves for a final rush, their energy weapons charged and ready. Zephyrian specialists were analyzing his position with mathematical precision, calculating the exact angles needed for elimination shots. The remaining Korthak officers were issuing final orders for maximum range, their voices sharp with urgency. Marcus activated his rifle's emergency beacon, broadcasting on all human military frequencies. This is Sergeant Marcus Chun, 2nd Colonial Marines. I am engaged with superior alien forces at grid reference 347 to 891. I have provided covering fire for civilian evacuation and disrupted enemy command structure. Mission complete. Tell my family I made them proud. The response came immediately from multiple stations. Marcus, hold position. Support is en route. Negative, Marcus replied, watching Thicarian soldiers begin their final approach. No support required. I have everything I need. And he did. He had his rifle, for rounds, and the absolute certainty that his actions had saved human lives. He had proven to the Galactic Empire that humanity would never be easy prey, never accept defeat gracefully, never stop fighting while even one human drew breath. The aliens thought they were about to eliminate the last resistance on Kepler, 442b. Marcus Chun was about to show them the difference between last and least. Hashtag the Galactic Empire ignored a wounded human sniper. Their last mistake, the Thicarian assault formation, was 30 meters away when Marcus fired his 9th shot. The lead soldier, a massive creature with ornate armor marking it as a squad leader, simply ceased to exist from the chest up. The psychological impact on the following troops was immediate and devastating. These aliens had conquered 47 star systems without ever facing an enemy that could eliminate their leaders with such casual precision. They hesitated. That hesitation cost them. Marcus's 10th shot punched through the armor of a heavy weapons specialist, detonating the alien's power pack in a brilliant explosion that killed 2 more Thicarians and sent the others diving for cover. The coordinated assault became a chaotic scramble as disciplined soldiers suddenly found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't understand. 3 rounds remaining. But something was changing on the battlefield. Marcus could hear it through his enhanced scope, the distinctive whine of human fusion engines approaching at high speed. Explosions began blooming across the alien positions, too large and too precise to be anything but orbital bombardment from human ships. Station 7, to all personnel, came the crackling radio transmission. Colonial Defense Fleet has arrived in system. Multiple human vessels engaging Empire forces in orbit. Ground support commencing immediately. Marcus watched through his scope as streams of energy descended from the sky, turning entire sections of the alien formation into molten craters. The Galactic Empire's forces, so confident in their numerical superiority moments before, suddenly found themselves caught between an immobile sniper who refused to die and naval gunfire from ships that weren't supposed to exist. The Korthak officers were screaming orders in their native language, trying to coordinate a retreat to their landing zones. But Marcus could see what they couldn't. Human Marines were already moving to cut off those escape routes, emerging from positions throughout the ruins of New Brisbane. The Empire's intelligence had been wrong about everything. Marcus keyed his radio. Station 7, this is Chun. How many ships? 18 vessels, including 3 heavy cruisers. The Empire fleet is withdrawing to outer system. We have local space superiority. 18 ships meant the human colonial defense forces had been planning this operation for weeks, possibly months. While the Empire celebrated their easy victory over New Brisbane, humanity had been marshalling forces for a counterattack. Marcus's desperate last stand hadn't just bought time for civilian evacuation. It had been the opening move in a larger strategic operation. Through his scope, Marcus watched a group of Thicarian soldiers attempting to establish a defensive perimeter around their remaining equipment. They moved with the professional competence of experienced warriors, but he could see the uncertainty in their actions. They had never faced an enemy that struck back after being defeated, that returned stronger than before, that treated apparent annihilation as merely a temporary setback. Marcus selected his target carefully, the Thicarian tactical coordinator who was trying to organize the defensive line. The alien was moving erratically, using cover effectively, clearly aware that a human sniper was still active in the area. But Marcus had been studying alien movement patterns for 8 years. He knew how they thought, how they reacted to pressure, how they betrayed their intentions through subtle body language. The 11th shot dropped the coordinator just as it reached what should have been perfect cover. The Thicarian formation immediately began falling apart as subordinates competed for command authority, their rigid hierarchy creating chaos when leadership was eliminated. 2 rounds remaining. Human Marines were advancing through the crystal formations now, their camouflage forms barely visible even to Marcus's enhanced optics. They moved with the fluid efficiency of professional soldiers who had been fighting this war for 3 years, who had learned to use every advantage their smaller, weaker bodies could provide against larger alien opponents. Marcus recognized the tactical formation, a classic encirclement designed to capture as many enemy prisoners as possible while minimizing human casualties. The Marines weren't trying to annihilate the alien forces. They were trying to gather intelligence, equipment, and potentially living specimens for study. The Empire was about to learn that humans could be just as methodical and calculating as any galactic power when the situation warranted it. A movement in his peripheral vision caught Marcus's attention. A lone Korthak officer was attempting to reach a communications array that had survived the orbital bombardment, clearly hoping to transmit intelligence about the human counterattack to the Empire fleet. The alien moved with desperate urgency, its pale blue features twisted with determination. Marcus tracked the Korthak through his scope, watching as it reached the communication device and began entering what appeared to be a priority transmission. Through his audio enhancement, he could hear fragments of the aliens' rapid speech. Human fleet, superior tactics, recommend immediate reinforcement. Marcus centered his crosshairs on the alien's head and squeezed the trigger. The 12th shot silenced the transmission permanently. The Korthak officer crumpled over its communication device, its warning to the Empire dying with it. Marcus had just eliminated the alien's chance to call for immediate reinforcement, potentially saving human lives in future engagements. One round remaining. Around him, the battle was ending. Thakarian soldiers were throwing down their weapons as human marines surrounded their positions. Zephyrian technicians were raising their multiple arms in surrender, their insectoid features displaying what appeared to be genuine fear. The remaining Korthak officers were being systematically captured by teams of humans who moved with predatory efficiency. Marcus kept his scope moving, searching for any remaining threats. His broken leg had gone numb hours ago, and he could feel consciousness beginning to fade from blood loss and exhaustion. But he maintained his watch, ready to use his final round if necessary. "Sergeant Chun," came a voice from behind him. Marcus turned slowly to see a human marine approaching his position, medical kit in hand. The marine's uniform bore the insignia of a corpsman, and his young face showed a mixture of awe and concern. "Sir, I'm Corpsman Williams. We're here to get you out of there." Marcus looked back through his scope one more time, confirming that the alien forces were fully neutralized. "Negative on immediate extraction, Corpsman. Need to maintain overwatch until the area is completely secure. Sir, with respect, you've been bleeding for 6 hours, and your leg needs immediate attention. The Marines have the situation under control." Marcus smiled weakly. "Williams, do you know how this engagement started?" "Sir, the Empire thought they had eliminated all human resistance. They were confident, relaxed, careless. I used 13 shots to teach them that confidence is a luxury they can't afford when fighting humans." Marcus ejected the magazine from his rifle and removed the final round, holding it up for the corpsman to see. "This is my insurance policy. As long as I have 1 round remaining, the aliens know this position is still active. Psychological warfare, corpsman. Sometimes the most important shot is the one you don't have to fire." Williams nodded slowly, beginning to understand. "How long do you maintain the position, sir?" "Until every alien on this planet is either captured or dead," Marcus replied, settling back into his firing position. "That's what snipers do, son. We hold the line until someone tells us to let go." The corpsman began setting up his medical equipment. "Then, I guess I'm staying here with you, Sergeant. Someone needs to make sure you're alive to hear that order when it comes." Marcus smiled as he returned to his scope, scanning for any signs of remaining resistance. Above them, human ships continued their patrols, and, around them, human marines secured the battlefield. The Galactic Empire had made a fundamental error in their assessment of human nature. They had assumed that defeating humanity once meant defeating them forever. Marcus Chun had just spent 6 hours teaching them how wrong they were. #The Galactic Empire ignored a wounded human sniper. Their last mistake 3 weeks later. Marcus Chun stood before the Galactic Council on the neutral station of Harmony's Edge, his legs still supported by a medical exoskeleton, but his bearing unmistakably that of a warrior. The council chamber was a vast sphere designed to accommodate representatives from dozens of species, each delegation seated according to complex protocols that Marcus didn't pretend to understand. What he did understand was the fear in the aliens' eyes as they looked at him. The human delegation was small. Admiral Sarah Morrison, Colonial Defense Force, Ambassador Elena Vasquez, Diplomatic Corps, and Marcus himself, present as what the official documents termed a military advisor. In reality, he was there as a living reminder of what humanity was capable of when pushed to extremes. The Korthak representative, its pale blue features bearing fresh scars from recent conflicts, spoke with carefully modulated tones. "The Empire acknowledges that our initial assessment of human military capability was incomplete. The engagement on Kepler 442b demonstrated tactical innovations we had not anticipated." Ambassador Vasquez maintained perfect diplomatic composure. "The Colonial Defense Force regrets the necessity of the recent engagement. Humanity has always preferred peaceful solutions to territorial disputes." "Peaceful solutions," repeated the Thakarian delegate, its massive form shifting uncomfortably in its specially designed chair. Your peaceful solution involved the complete destruction of 3 Imperial battle groups and the capture of over 12,000 military personnel. Admiral Morrison leaned forward slightly. Our response was proportional to the threat presented. The Empire initiated hostilities by attacking a civilian settlement without provocation or formal declaration of war. Marcus remained silent, as instructed, but he could see the delegates' attention constantly drifting to him. Word of his stand on Kepler 442b had spread throughout the galactic community with remarkable speed. The story grew with each telling. One wounded human holding off an entire army, buying time for a devastating counterattack that reversed what should have been an easy Imperial victory. The reality was both simpler and more complex. Marcus had indeed held his position for 6 hours against overwhelming odds, but his primary achievement had been psychological rather than tactical. By refusing to die quietly, he had forced the Empire to commit significant resources to eliminating a single soldier. That commitment had delayed their consolidation of the captured territory just long enough for the human fleet to arrive. But the psychological impact extended far beyond military calculations. Every species in the galaxy now knew that humans didn't surrender, didn't retreat, didn't accept defeat as final. They came back. They adapted. They learned from every engagement and applied those lessons with devastating efficiency. The Zephyrian observer, its compound eyes fixed on Marcus, spoke with the clicking language of its species. The hive mind wishes to understand what drives individual humans to continue fighting when survival probability approaches 0. Ambassador Vasquez translated the question, and Marcus received a subtle nod indicating he was authorized to respond. He stood carefully, his medical exoskeleton whirring softly as it compensated for his still healing leg. Survival isn't always the primary objective, Marcus said simply. Sometimes you fight because fighting itself sends a message. Sometimes you hold a position because the cost of abandoning it is higher than the cost of staying. Explain this concept of cost, demanded the Korthak representative. Military doctrine suggests that individual preservation serves the greater strategic good. How does pointless sacrifice advance human objectives? Marcus smiled, the expression apparently unsettling several delegates who shifted nervously in their seats. It wasn't pointless. My actions on Kepler 442b achieved multiple objectives: civilian evacuation, intelligence gathering, disruption of enemy operations, and demonstration of human resolve. The fact that I survived was fortunate, but not essential to mission success. You were prepared to die for mere symbolic value? Asked the Thicarian delegate. I was prepared to die to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. The symbolic value was secondary. The chamber fell silent as the delegates processed this concept. Marcus could see them struggling with the implications. Military forces throughout the galaxy were composed of professional soldiers, mercenaries, or genetically programmed warriors who fought for pay, glory, or biological imperative. The idea of sacrificing oneself for abstract principles or strangers' welfare was alien to most species. Admiral Morrison activated a holographic display showing the current tactical situation. The Empire's withdrawal from 7 additional star systems demonstrates the effectiveness of our defensive strategy. Colonial defense forces have established security perimeters around all human settlements, with standing orders to treat any unauthorized intrusion as an act of war. Your defensive strategy involves preemptive strikes against forces that approach human territory, protested the Korthak representative. This is hardly defensive behavior. Our defensive strategy, corrected Ambassador Vasquez, involves ensuring that potential aggressors understand the true cost of attacking human civilians. The Empire learned this lesson on Kepler 442b. We hope other powers will learn it through observation rather than experience. Marcus watched the delegates' reactions carefully. He could see the calculations running through their minds. How many humans were scattered across the galaxy? How many were trained soldiers? How many were simply civilians with access to weapons and the will to use them? The answers were disturbing from the aliens' perspective. Humanity had spread across dozens of worlds during their 3 centuries of space travel, establishing mining colonies, agricultural settlements, and research stations throughout the galactic frontier. Most were lightly defended, apparently vulnerable to conventional conquest. But Kepler 442b had proven that appearances were deceiving. The Council wishes to propose formal recognition of human territorial claims in exchange for guaranteed non-aggression toward Council member species, announced the Zephyrian observer. Ambassador Vasquez nodded politely. Humanity appreciates the Council's desire for peaceful coexistence. However, our territorial claims include the right to defend ourselves and our allies using any means necessary. We will not accept artificial limitations on our military responses to aggression. The Korthak representative's features darkened. You demand the right to unlimited retaliation while maintaining that you are a peaceful species. This is contradictory. Marcus received another nod and stood again. There's no contradiction. We prefer peace, but we don't accept it at any cost. If you attack our people, we will respond with whatever force is required to ensure it doesn't happen again. If that level of force seems excessive to you, perhaps you should reconsider the wisdom of attacking us in the first place. And if the Empire chooses to resume hostilities with greater force, asked the Thicarian delegate. Marcus's smile widened, and several delegates actually recoiled. Then you'll discover what 1,000,000 Marcus chins look like when they're properly supplied and supported. The engagement on Kepler 442b was one wounded sniper with limited ammunition. Imagine what we can accomplish when we're not caught by surprise. The chamber erupted in agitated discussion among the various delegations. Marcus caught fragments of conversation in multiple languages, concerns about human expansion, debates over military capabilities, speculation about human intentions. The fear was palpable and, from humanity's perspective, entirely appropriate. Admiral Morrison stood and activated a new display showing human fleet dispositions. Colonial Defense Forces are currently establishing permanent bases in 18 star systems, with plans for expansion to 37 systems within 2 years. These installations will provide security for human civilians and humanitarian aid for any species requesting assistance. Humanitarian aid armed with planetary defense systems, muttered the Korthak representative. Aid that comes with the guarantee that we won't abandon our allies when threatened, corrected Ambassador Vasquez. Humanity has learned that peace requires strength, and strength requires the will to use it when necessary. The Zephyrian observer raised a delicate manipulator appendage. The hive mind requests clarification. Will humanity accept membership in existing galactic power structures, or do you intend to establish independent authority? Marcus felt all eyes turn to him again. This was the crucial question, the one that would determine whether humanity became part of the existing order or remained a disruptive force that threatened established hierarchies. We'll work with anyone who treats us as equals, Marcus said finally. But we won't submit to anyone who thinks they can rule us. The choice is yours. The session continued for 3 more hours, with detailed negotiations over territorial boundaries, trade agreements, and mutual defense protocols. But Marcus knew the real business had been concluded in those first exchanges. The Galactic Empire and its allies had learned that humanity was not just another client species to be managed and exploited. As the delegations filed out of the chamber, the Korthak representative approached Marcus directly. You understand that this arrangement is temporary? The Empire has resources you cannot imagine, forces beyond your current capability to resist. Marcus adjusted his medical exoskeleton and smiled one final time. You understand that humans have fought wars for 3,000 years? We've faced impossible odds before. Sometimes we lose, but we always learn, we always adapt, and we always come back stronger. The alien's pale features showed something that might have been respect. Perhaps we will meet again under different circumstances. Perhaps, Marcus agreed. But next time you might want to reconsider ignoring the wounded snipers. We have a tendency to be more dangerous than we appear. As the Korthak representative walked away, Admiral Morrison approached with a slight smile. Well done, Sergeant. I think they finally understand what they're dealing with. Marcus looked out through the chamber's massive viewing ports at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, human colonies were growing, human families were building new lives, and human soldiers were standing watch to protect them all. The Galactic Empire had tried to make humanity another conquest. Instead, they had awakened something that would reshape the balance of power throughout the galaxy. One wounded sniper on a crystalline battlefield had proven that humans were different. Now the entire galaxy would have to learn to live with the consequences of that difference.